want to thank you all for joining me today. I know you have all heard the rumors about the restructuring of the company.
In Section 10-2, there are 3 kinds of change.
And the lack of wealth and money could actually benefit you, as it did with the fiat.
There's a change. And for us to understand this chapter, we need to know what
I want to thank you all for joining me today. I know you have all heard the rumors about the restructuring of the company. Well, yes, the company has had some loss that has hurt us financially. With this being said, we have no choice but to lay off some of you. Those of you affected will be able to draw unemployment for the time you are without work. Our financial team is actively trying to figure out the best way to take care of this misfortunate issue. I wanted to call you all together to put the cards on the table and to let you know what changes are going to be happening in the next couple of weeks. We are going to try to make this a proactive change instead of a reactive change. Have you ever been involved in an issue like this? I know I have, and was very nervous at what the outcome would be. I was a displaced worker in 2003 when a company I worked for went through a huge downsizing. I drew unemployment for a couple of months and was lucky enough to find gainful employment at another facility. Change can be hard, but sometimes necessary for survival. Take, for example, the BlackBerry in 2009. Things weren't thought all the way through on what technology advances would be taking place. Disruptive intervention occurred, and other companies like Apple started at the bottom with their products and quickly made their way up and became a competitor for BlackBerry and other established competitors. Super trends of the future business. More segmented marketplace and moving toward more niche products. More competitors offering targeted product requiring faster speed to market. Some traditional companies may not survive radical change. China, India, and other offshore suppliers are changing the way we work. Labor savings to Americans. Half pay for harder workers. Jobs are disappearing in the U.S. Knowledge, not information, becoming the new competitive age. There are 2 forces that are examples of needs for change. There's the internal, which consists of human resource concerns, which can be job satisfaction, high absenteeism, and turnover rates. You have to deal with the overload of work or address job design. There's also managed behavior, the excessive conflict between managers and employees, and that requires need for training or transferring people to other departments. The second one is external, which consists of demographic characteristics, which is age, education, skill level, gender, and immigration. There's technology changes, which has been one of the greatest forces of productivity in our lifetime. Manufacturing automation, which consists of information technology. Shareholder, customer, and market changes. Customers are more involved and more demanding. Change customer preferences, domestic and international preferences, which can consist of mergers and acquisitions. Social and political pressures, which consist of war, values, and leadership. There's 2 types of changes we talk about. Proactive, which is carefully thought out changes in anticipation of possible or expected problems or opportunities. Take, for example, the Disney World Magic Band. They invested $1 billion in wearable technology, revolutionizing how money was spent. It begins with a My Magic, a vacation planning system which features websites, My Disney Experience. There's data collecting with the wristbands, and they interact with scanners through the 40-square-mile theme park. It can plan a vacation as well as plan ride sequences before a trip is made. It can also reserve front-of-the-line access for up to 3 rides or parades, and also character meet and greets. The band can be used to buy items and also act as a room key, parking claim, and VIP access, which allows employees to call you by your first name. What was Disney's goal? They are hoping that more money will be spent if it is easier to navigate through the theme park. During the testing phase, they found that they were able to accommodate 3,000 additional guests, and the fast pass reservations were up 40%. However, some guests were leery due to the risk of ID theft, and some thought it was a bit creepy. Disney is trying to take the proactive stance and use technology advances to do so. An example of a reactive change. Making changes in response to the problem that arose in 2012. It was known as the pink slime frenzy. It was a beef additive that can be used and was used for years, but it was noted on social media and caused an uproar from consumers, which caused grocers to pull the product off the shelf, which caused job reduction in some places that provided the meat to the stores. This caused a chain reaction due to social media. Another reactive example is in 2010, the Gulf of Mexico crisis. The explosion of the platform Deepwater Horizon killed 11 people and it sunk. It is known as the largest oil spill in the U.S. It was found that the emergency shutoff valve failed. No backup was in place due to it not being mandated at that time and also due to the high cost, $500,000. The leak was eventually capped. BP pled guilty to federal felony charges and environmental law violations and was forced to sell $40 billion in assets to pay liabilities. This then caused a cut in the number of oil wells and platforms in half, and they are still dealing with residential issues from this crisis even today. Some people wonder why this even happened. In 1989, what was known as the Exxon Valdez oil spill occurred in Alaska. People are still wondering why BP went through what they did when they had an example that they could have gone by in 1989.
In section 10-2, there are 3 kinds of change, from least threatening to most threatening. Least threatening is something we've seen before as a company. It's the adaptive change, it's the reintroduction to a familiar practice. So let's say we used a practice before maybe 10 years ago, then we stopped doing it, then picked it back up, something like that. This form of change is the lowest in complexity, cost, and uncertainty. An example would be Black Friday, where employees have to work extra hours to get things done because there's more people coming in, more customers. Just like an accountant would do extra hours during tax preparation season. Somewhat threatening is something new for the company, something that's never been there before, never been practiced. It's the innovative change is the practice of a company that has never seen anything and wants to apply it to better produce their products. This form of change involves moderate complexity, cost, and uncertainty. An example would be a department store open for 24 hours instead of their regular hours. Employees have to get used to working different shifts, working more hours, and being flexible with their schedules. Very threatening, this is a brand new thing to a completely different industry, like a mortaring company selling their bricks and other products online instead of people coming in and actually buying it. It's more complex, costly, and uncertain. Next we have Lewin's change model, which is also 3 steps: unfreezing, changing, and refreezing. Unfreezing is creating the motivation to change. Managers encourage employees to let go of attitudes and behaviors that are resistant to innovation. So let's say an accountant did all his work manually instead of on the computer. A manager would tell him to do it online so that records could be kept and not have any lost files. Second, changing is learning new ways or doing things. Employees need to be given the tools for change, new information, new perspectives, and new models of behavior. Managers can help by providing benchmarking results, role models, mentors, experts, and training. Going back to the accountant, they can do their work manually, but a manager would want them to do some of it online so they can learn the basics and then one day just transition completely, which is the 3rd step, refreezing, making new ways normal. Employees need to be helped to integrate the changed attitudes and behaviors into their normal ways of doing things. Next, we have Kotter's 8 steps for leading organizational change. Step 1, establish a sense of urgency. Unfreeze the organization by creating a compelling reason to why change is needed. Step 2, create the guiding coalition. Create a cross-functional, cross-level group of people with enough power to lead change. Step 3, develop a vision and a strategy. Create a vision and a strategic plan to guide the change process. Step 4, Communicate the change vision. Create and implement a communicational strategy that consistently communicates the new vision and strategic plan. Step 5. Empower broad-based action. Eliminate barriers to change and use target elements of change to transform the organization. Step 6. Generate short-term wins. Plan for a short-term win or improvement. Recognize and reward people who contribute to the wins. Step 7. Consolidate gains and produce more change. The guiding coalition uses credibility from short-term wins to more change. Additional people are brought into the process as change cascades throughout the organization. Anchor new approaches in the culture. Reinforce the changes by highlighting connections between new behaviors and processes and organizational success. Develop methods to ensure leadership development and succession. And going back to the last one, steps 1 and 4 of this process are the unfreezing stage in the last process. Steps 5 through 7 represent the changing stage. Step 8 corresponding to refreezing. Section 10-3 is organizational development, what it is and what it can do. Organizational development is a set of techniques for implementing planned change to make people and organizations more effective. What can it be used for? It has 3 steps: managing conflict, revitalizing organizations, and adapting to mergers. Step 1, managing conflict. Conflict will always be present in any kind of business, any organization. If 2 owners are feuding, an OD specialist can be used to solve the problem. Revitalizing organizations. Technology nowadays place organizations in the position of having to adapt new behaviors in order to resist decline. Adapting to mergers. OD experts can help integrate 2 firms with varying cultures, products, and procedures. How OD works. There's 4 steps in the how OD works process. 1 is diagnosis, 2 intervention, 3 evaluation, and 4 feedback. Diagnosis is what is the problem. To carry out the diagnosis, OD consultants or managers use some combination of questionnaires, surveys, interviews, meetings, records, and direct observation of people's attitudes to identify the problem. Intervention is what shall we do about it. Treatment or innovation is the attempt to correct the diagnosed problem. Evaluation is how well the intervention worked. An OD program needs objective evaluation to see if it has done any good to the company. And then 4, feedback, is how the diagnosis can be further refined so it doesn't happen again. And last, we have the effectiveness of OD in 4 steps. Step 1, multiple interventions. Combined interventions have found to work better than single interventions. Success stories always involve multiple interventions. Step 2, management support. If it has the backing of a OD specialist or manager, the program is more likely to succeed. Step 3, goals geared to both short-term and long-term goals. Change programs are more successful when they are oriented towards achieving both short-term and long-term goals, just to have a basis of where you're going. Step 4, OD is affected by culture. OD intervention that worked in one country should not be blindly applied to a similar situation in another country, because we both have different cultures. We both go about doing things different ways.
Okay. I'm going to be discussing Chapter 10, Section 4, which is all about promoting innovation within an organization. So innovation is the activity of creating new ideas and converting them into useful applications, like a new product or new goods, new services. Before you get into innovation, you have to have creativity and ideas for invention. Like invention is creating or making up something new, and creativity is the act of developing new and imaginative ideas into reality. Okay, so there's 2 different types of innovation. You have product and process innovation. Product is the change in the appearance of a product or a service, or the creation of a new one. And process is the change in the way that a product or service is conceived, manufactured, or disseminated. Okay, so then you have what's called the seeds of innovation, and that's like the roots or the framework of innovation. That's where you have to start. They were created by a guy named Scott Birkin. He's a Microsoft employee, And number 1 is hard work in a specific direction. People diligently working to solve a well-defined problem, they work hard and it could span many years. And without a direction, where are you going? You have to have direction for innovation. Okay, which leads you into number 2, which is hard work with direction change. You could have a direction, but without being willing to change your direction, it doesn't really do you much good. Innovations occur when people change their approach to solving a problem, and that's what's most effective. The next seed of innovation is just curiosity. So basically, you just have to be interested or curious in your approach to solving problems. If you're not interested in what you're doing, you're probably not going to be very innovative. You're not going to come up with those inventions or ideas. All right, and the 4th seed of innovation is wealth and money. Now, it may sound intimidating, like you need a bunch of money to start ideas and innovations and come up with these new inventions. While it helps, it's not necessarily true. And it actually benefits you in some ways, like it did with Fiat, the automotive company overseas, who they were near bankruptcy. And what really motivated them was the lack of wealth and money. They were having a hard time, and so they were looking at ways to improve their market share in the U.S. in order to get back on track. So they did that, and they succeeded greatly. Like they own Chrysler now, so that's why you hear of like Fiat Chrysler nowadays. So that's one way. Okay, for number 5, you just have necessity, which is another one of those driving factors in the seeds of innovation. Like many organizations are more likely to achieve something when they absolutely need to accomplish a broader goal. Like the company Xerox hires innovation managers to hunt for inventions and products from startups in India that Xerox might adapt for uses in North America. Okay, and for number 6, it's simply just a combination of all of the above. Hard work with a specific direction. You got to be willing to change direction. You need curiosity or a passion and interest. You need wealth and money to motivate you, not necessarily to be innovative, just to motivate you. And then necessity.
I have 10.5, which is the threats of change. And for us to understand this chapter, we need to know what resistance of change actually means. And what resistance of change actually means is the emotional and behavioral response to the real or imaginary threats to an established organization or work environment that you've been in or have been around. Why people have the most problem with change is usually the way you was brought up or who you've been around, your environment. Usually if you have a parent that's more relaxed, flexible, more understanding to something, you're more willing and open to change compared to a parent that is not necessarily as relaxed, but is like, has a schedule for everything. You do this at this time, you do this at that time. You are more resistant to change. 10 reasons why employees resist change. The number 1 reason is individuals' preposition towards change to begin with. That really depends on how you was raised. Like I was saying earlier, if you was raised in an environment where everybody was more relaxed, you're more open to it. If you was raised in an environment where everything was scheduled out from the time you woke up to the time you went to bed, you are one of the people who prefer not to change because it's not how you're used to it. The second reason why employees resist change so much is because of surprise and fear of the unknown. Most people do not want to wake up not knowing what they're supposed to do the next day, how they're supposed to handle what's going on in the world. They like to have structure. But if you're more willing to take surprises and to take the change of the everyday, you're opening yourself up to new experiences, new outcomes. The third one is the climate of trust. You must have trust. If you work with somebody and you don't trust them, you're allowing yourself for secrecies, not trusting or having confidence in yourself. You're struggling with everything around you, which makes you getting able to do the work harder. The fourth one is fear of failure. Nobody wants to fail. So say if you're doing something and it's completely new to you, you're scared the whole entire time that you're going to fail, that you're not going to do as good as you could do. So a way to change that would be, don't be afraid. Just let it go. Roll with it. If it's something new, try it your hardest, whether you fail at it or not. Everyone makes failures. That's how you make a better person, is to fail. The fifth fear most employees have is the loss of status or job security. When they say loss of status, it usually means like if a new CEO or someone who is above you comes in and they're afraid that they're going to demean them, make them feel littler than what they are, hurt their feelings. It just depends on that. Now, job security usually happens, or the fear of it usually happens when your business or company starts over, has to refigure out everything. Say if something was going bad, they have to reconstruct the plan, the original idea, everything. The next one is number 6 is peer pressure. Everyone falls to peer pressure, whether it's your friends, your family, co-workers, any of that. You always want to try to fit in, but maybe fitting in isn't necessarily what you want to do. It's always great to be different, to be unique. Number 7 is disruption of cultural traditions or group relationships. Usually that is when, let's say, your friend is getting reassigned to a different location. You're afraid that maybe that was your only friend. You're not going to have anyone else to talk to be around, so it puts off a different type of mood towards you and your employees. Number 8 would be personal conflict. You are more willing to hear how well you're doing or what you need to improve on from a coworker, not necessarily the boss. When you hear something from your boss, you usually take it the bad way. You're not willing to take his comments and his remarks to improve yourself. You feel like you already know it, so hearing it from him or her, it just makes it harder on you. Number 9, lack of tact or poor timing introduces change in an insensitive manner or in an awkward timing that creates employee resistment. All that means is, say if you have something happening in your personal life that you don't necessarily talk about at work because it's awkward to you or it's sensitive to you, you're worried that your employee or employer or your coworkers are going to say something to hurt you or do something that you don't want them to do. Number 10 is non-reinforcement reward system. Nobody wants to work the extra hours or do the overtime or something your boss asked you without getting rewarded for it. It makes it harder. Employees are afraid and fear that change, whether it be your employer asking you to work extra hours, is going to mean he's going to continue to ask you on and on for a long time. The employee is less likely to resist the change if you're offering more of an incentive, say extra rewards or you get a bonus at the end, and something that makes them want to do the work.